Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome back to On Air with Dr. Pete and welcome to 2025. I can't believe that it's here already and what an exciting year. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm your host, Dr. Pete, and I'm excited that you have joined us today. And so this new year is upon us, and I know many of us want all these resolutions, and let me just tell you as a behaviorist, they don't stick. But, we can make little small changes, but I'm hoping that we can create some clear and focused intentions. That's what we do in mindfulness, the small changes. And so you can commit so you don't feel overwhelmed. The last thing I want to see is you giving up on goals, because I have worked with so many people that they lose sight of their goals. This year, I am going to going to carry over my commitment to my health and well-being. And so just get my back healthy. And we are going to think about all these great things. And I'm so happy because I have the perfect guest for you today. This is someone that you are going to want to hear everything about, Stacey Vulakh. Welcome, Stacey, to On Air with Dr. Pete. And she's all the way from California. She's a great human being. Energy and enthusiasm is infectious, and I know that you're going to love her. She's an experienced business coach, a podcast host, and a mentor. An accomplished entrepreneur with a master's in social work. So we're going to break down all that behavioral stuff today. And she provides her clients with support and space for emotional inquiry and advancement, helping her clients work through life's many obstacles. Stacey, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I know your time's valuable, so I'm going to jump right in. Cool?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your background. I read that you initially started in the MBA.
Yep.
Which I know a lot of people think is sexy, but when you're on the inside, tell us, how your career evolved.
I was just thinking about that. So I have a business degree and did spend about 6 years in business. I had a sales job. I was terrible at it and ended up walking away from that. Found my way to the NBA, which was all kinds of exciting. Mm-hmm. And as a young 20-year-old, all kinds of experiences, locker rooms, being on, walking into the United Center when Michael Jordan and the Bulls were at their peak, and it's just the team, the coaching staff, and me and my boss. Amazing things, right? Yeah. And I talked about this yesterday. When you have a job that is, sexy and glamorous, and from the outside, everybody says, oh, this is amazing. But when you're on the inside, it works for a while, and then it stops working, not because the job is wrong, but because we evolve and we change as individuals. Yes. And after that, I went and I got my master's in social work. I worked with New York City police officers in the wake of September 11th for a while, running groups and doing one-to-one mental health counseling. Mm-hmm. And then I found my way to California as a newlywed with my husband and needed to reinvent myself. And that's how I got into coaching.
That's just so cool. Well, I'm also... What was it like as a woman in the NBA, right? Because that's one of the things. So I'm in the world of sports, and as psychologists or mental health providers in the world of sports can be challenging. And there was a high level case this year at the San Antonio Spurs. So I don't know, what was your experience like as a woman in
that? So my boss was a woman, and okay. A lot of the women on my team were women. Yeah. I would say. There was definitely an old boys thing to it, for sure. I mean, this was the 90s. There was definitely some of that. But, I had a lot of guy friends growing up, and I have a brother, and I'm very comfortable in that world. But I could see where, if that's not your personality, it wasn't going to vibe.
Yeah, and we weren't planning to talk about. We could probably just do an episode just on that, actually.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. Like we talk. One of my colleagues is a female who was with the Giants for 16 years, and she talks about like covering your ass up, if you will, right? Like as a woman being in this world, dressing appropriately. Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you, if I'm being more blunt, when I was working with as a social worker with police officers, I had a colleague who was, a female, and she said, Stacey, this is probably too much information for this show, but I'm going to share it. She said, you have to make sure you wear like bras with padding because you're in a situation where you're facilitating a group with a bunch of, guys. And I was like, oh, right. That's a good one. Yeah.
No, there's not too much. I mean, that's what we do in the show. Like that's what.
Yeah.
it's important for people to hear that because you had to. So, all right. So you left the MBA, you got your master's in social work, and I know you've spoken about how some people thought you were crazy for doing that because this
Yes.
was like the dream job. But you've shared openly that you felt unfulfilled. So, how did switching, how did that help kind of create new direction in your life?
Well, it started almost even before I switched because I knew if I was going to walk away, I had to make sure I knew where I was walking to. And so that was, like I said, I was very young and I didn't even realize I was doing this until much later. But I had to ask myself, okay, where are you going? What do you
Yeah.
want to do next? I didn't want another dopamine hit job. I wanted to do something that was fulfilling, that aligned with my values, that really, touched my heart. And that's how I got into serving. And that was the first step to becoming a social worker, was figuring that out and how can I serve in that capacity. And I've evolved. I've had, ironically enough, when I was in graduate school, I got a job working in luxury retail. I worked at Louis Vuitton and I sold handbags.
Yeah.
And even though it was a sales job, I was counseling and supporting and
100%.
serving every person who came through that door,
100%. Yeah.
right? Whether somebody came in and knew in 3 minutes, I want that bag, or I had somebody come in and was with me for 2 hours and wanted to see every bag. It didn't matter. I was there doing heart-centered work.
That is amazing. Yeah, I was bartending. That's what led me into psychology. So
Yes,
I
I
think that's
mean,
a clearer path.
yes, crash course in psychology for sure.
Yeah.
But then through every evolution of my career, when we moved to California and I needed to reinvent, as long as I was doing something that was heart-centered and serving and fulfilled my core values,
Yeah.
I just followed the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. I love that. Follow the breadcrumbs. So your Instagram is labeled the midlife crisis coach, which I love since you're helping people in the midlife. And I think I'm going. I keep saying I'm going through a midlife crisis. So this is why I was so excited about today's episode. So share with us how that course of work came to be. This midlife crisis coaching.
Again, following the breadcrumbs, a lot of, the helpers in the world are helping based on their own personal experience. And I didn't have a, crisis. I don't think most of us today, if we're doing this work, if we've, been in therapy, if we're, we know so much more than our parents did, right? So our previous generations might have had these very grandiose midlife crises, stereotypically buying a sports car or having a breakdown. But
Yeah.
we're just not going to do that, right? So it's more of an existential, not even crisis, but like a questioning. And of course, it looks different for everyone. There's so many of us who go on yoga retreats or who experience, psychedelics at a later age, whatever you're doing to seek the answers. But there's this low level satisfaction that I see with a lot of my clients who on the outside have, by all standards, reached levels of success and accolades, but they feel like unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And, how can, the question really is what can the rest of their life look like? It's like a timeline hop. Are we going to stay here and just do this because we could? It's okay. It's good. But I want it to be really great. And almost, I feel bad saying that because it's really good. So there's a little bit of guilt. But there's also this, I don't know, but they do know because, intuitively they're aligned. Yeah. Yeah.
I always say you can never lie to yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling it, you can try and numb it or ignore it or push it down, but you can never lie to yourself. And it's a really important time. And I think I love the point you made about the fact that like our parents didn't have this information. They would have just went on to do stuff and they didn't have social media. That's why I love that that you're able to do that on your Instagram and. I know you've got your podcast too, which I've listened to, and it's great. And you've also mentioned putting your mask on first, which is very much acceptance and commitment therapy metaphor that we love. And so it's a simple concept, and it's one that I say that almost at least once a day. I would say I say that. But why do you think that this is so difficult for many of us to do?
For a couple of reasons. One, I mean, I just think I have twins and they're 15 now, but I think back to
Oh,
when I was
wow.
literally flying on an airplane with them. And if
Yeah.
something had happened, I would have never put my mask on first.
Mm,
But when you imagine yourself sitting there, I realized, wow, I would have to. Otherwise, how could I possibly help them? Right.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's like a real life. I can still imagine being on the plane and having that thought, okay, what would I really do? So that's one. We just can't imagine that we would do it. But second of all,
Wait, hold on a second.
our
Your brain thought about that on its own?
yeah, it
I
did.
love
I
that. Oh my
rem-
God. I've read
yeah,
about that, but
yeah.
I love that your brain. Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you. And secondly, we're just so conditioned as a society, men and women, to just, hustle, to just keep
Yeah.
going. There's glory in being tired, and these
Yeah.
monikers that women adopt. Oh, I'm such a hot mess. Like, no, there's no. For me, it just didn't work. It doesn't resonate. I tried
Yeah.
that. It just does not work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your body doesn't lie. So, I'm
Ever.
yeah,
Ever.
ever.
Ever. So really about connecting mind body, it sounds like that's a lot of what you do as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And teaching people how to do that, teaching people that it's okay.
Yeah.
And a lot of the work we do is, because women and men too, we go to the worst case scenario. Okay, so let's follow that out. And most people don't take the time to actually go through the steps of like running a worst case scenario to the end. And when you do, you realize, oh, yeah, that's probably never going to happen. So it's so much pattern interrupting that we have to
Yes.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Pattern interrupting. I love that. And I'm guessing you also learned some of that from 15-year-old twins too. They real life teach you about
Every day.
every day.
Yes.
When you said that, I really had a reaction in my body because I know that I remember my 15-year-old self, and I was really awkward. Like I was so uncomfortable, and oh my
Yes.
God, it's a really interesting and growing time. Yeah,
It is.
yeah,
These 15-year-olds, these kids today, you've heard this, they know
yeah,
so much more than we did.
totally.
But at the same time, they're still 15,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The impact that the World Wide Web has had on us, this is really the generation, that will kind of see it more. Like growing up with that level of information is wild,
Wild. Yes.
wild,
Yes.
and super cool. So you've also talked about pausing and listening to your intuition. So we're talking about that a lot today with mind and body, and constantly asking yourself, what do you need? And so,
Yeah.
what's one piece of advice that you would offer your clients who might be searching for something more?
The, there has to be a time when you commune with yourself on a daily basis. It could be, I mean, for me, I get up before everybody in my house and I
Yeah,
sit, I journal, I have coffee, it's a whole hour, 45 minutes, but it
nice.
doesn't need to be that. It could be 10 minutes where you're just sitting still, journaling, meditating, walking, but with no device and just checking in with yourself. It could be something as simple as like, oh, my back hurts today, right? You kind of start there. And then if you're needing to have a conversation with God or meditating, whatever it is, but there has to be this moment where
Yeah.
you ask yourself, how am I doing today? What's
Mm,
working? What's not working? What do I want? Put your hand on your heart. Ask God, like, what do I need to know today?
yeah.
There has to be that, and I just don't see that enough.
I heard you when you said it the first time, God, and then you just said it a second time, God. And so I'm curious now. The curiosity in me just, ticked up about the role of God or sort of how you build that into your work, whether personal or professional, if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, so this is something that's still unfolding for me in real time. I grew up in church and then,
Yeah.
always have had a strong just belief and trust in the universe. And
Hmm.
for a long time, probably like 30 years, I stopped using the word God. And it was all about the
Wow.
universe for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just within the past couple of years, I've found myself back in church and my family's there. And I use it just because it's a generic term, but oftentimes I will say God, universe, source, divine, whatever, but
Yeah.
some sort of higher power, something, whatever you believe in. Yeah, there has to be that there. There just has
Yeah.
to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I love that you said it's like it's evolving in front of you, and I thank you for sharing like the 30-year. I was saying for a while that I was a recovering Catholic, just because
Yeah.
that was kind of fun to say. But um, you know, everyone I work with, especially athletes, like they have almost all have some kind of spiritual or God, role,
Yes.
and so I bring it into my work, based on that person's beliefs, whether
Right.
they're Muslim, whatever it is that their God
Yes.
is. Yeah, obviously. And so I think that it's so what we say, and I'm sure you do, mind, body, spirit. And for me, the
Right.
spirit is that last piece. And so, and as a healer, as you are, you have to take care of your own spirit. And it sounds like you're kind of re-evolution of this word God. And it's funny because it really stuck out to me. Like I heard it loud when you said it, and I love that because it's you. It's like it's in you. Then obviously.
Thank you. It's something that I'm still, if I'm being very honest, like getting
Yeah.
comfortable with again.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. So, what about your philosophy about simplicity? I know that you've talked about on the value of simplicity and making time count, like the quality over quantity. So, what would you add about that?
So quality over quantity came in 20 years ago when I left. I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, and whenever I would go back to be with my family, it felt like it was never enough time. Whether I was there for 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, whatever. And I thought to myself, Stacey, you are going to be living apart from your family for the next foreseeable future. I don't want to always think it's never enough. So I very much switched into, okay, I've got 2 days here. It's going to be amazing because you could have 2 days that are great or 12 days that are just like, eh. So
Yeah.
show up, quality over quantity. I do that with everything, food, with
Yes.
even a phone conversation, right? I miss my best friend. She's 3,000 miles away, but if I can talk to her for 10 minutes, I'm going to soak every bit of goodness out of that, and just feel great about that. And I suppose that is my number one sort of underpinning for this simplicity. Life is so complicated, and we overcomplicate it. And
Totally.
that's what, at the top, at the intro, you were talking about New Year's resolutions. They're just
Yeah.
not going to stick if they're complicated.
No.
It has to be so stinking simple that your brain says, oh, this is so easy, it's not going to work. That's exactly where you start, right?
Totally.
And make that stick, and then you go on to the next part, and then you go
Yeah.
on to the next piece. You build, they're blocks.
They're blocks like scaffolding, and
Yes.
yes, our producer Lee Castelli needed to hear that too. Quality over quantity is also the New Jersey, California thing. So I'm sure she's in the background listening and thankful that you shared that. But it's true. I mean, and I love what you just said. I always say this, that it's literally, and I say it to be provocative, and I think people hear it, but I'm like, we complicate life more than it needs to be. We absolutely make it more difficult than it needs to be.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
So what's
I'll give you another example with
yeah,
my
let's hear it.
family if I can,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
people,
please.
we have family dinner as many nights a week as we possibly can. And now we're in a season where that's probably just one night, but
Yeah.
sometimes, ideally it's more than that. But our dinner formula is simple. I have some sort of meat, some sort of animal protein, and a vegetable, and that's
Yeah.
it. I'm not
Yeah.
like, and it's usually just steamed, or it is so simple, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It's
No.
cooked. We eat it together. Sometimes we have 10 minutes, but there's no like fancy formulas. That's it.
Right.
And sure, does it get boring? Yeah, of course, but we
Yeah.
can spice it up if we want, but keep it so simple.
Yeah.
That's it.
Boring's not bad.
No, boring is not bad.
But
No, we could go on about that.
we
Yeah.
could go on. But well, because you mentioned a dopamine hit earlier, and so like I think that's what people are seeking. And so rather than seeking that, you just accept boring is good, boring is healthy.
Yeah. And not everything needs to be this, off the chart wild excitement all the time. I tell my kids all the time, not every day is a day at Disney. You can't have every day be a day at Disneyland, because then when
Yeah.
you go, it wouldn't have the impact.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. And
value in routine.
there's value in that, and you need a break when you get back from Disney.
Oh, like a whole week to
A
recover.
whole week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about we talked about resolutions, and so anything that you are trying to think about, or that for listeners maybe what they could do in 2025 to kind of flourish and kick off. So you already gave us this gem of like the building block. So if it feels easy, do it, because then you build. What else? Any other suggestion that you might add on to
You know,
that?
that alone time, that 5 or 10 minutes, whatever that looks like, download an app and meditate for 2 minutes. Literally, just breathe. Start there. I'm a huge journaler, and I know a lot of people have conflicting thoughts about journaling. But here's where I would tell you to start: is very simply 3 things that you're grateful for every day. They could be little things or they could be big things. 3 things that you like about yourself. Particularly as women, we stand in front of a mirror and we just pick ourselves apart. But learning to like yourself, maybe it was, wow, I held the door for a stranger, or I didn't lose my cool, I didn't lose my marbles with my kids, or I remembered my friend's birthday and I actually called her instead of just texting her, right? Whatever, but you have to find 3 things that you like about yourself, 3 things you're grateful for. And then I recommend people say 3 things that you're going to do today, not giant things, but like the tiniest thing. I'm finally going to drop off those boxes at Goodwill, or, whatever it is. I'm going to schedule my mammogram appointment, whatever it is. So simple. Just start there. Start there.
Those are gems. Thank you for that. So I know you offer one-on-one coaching, and I know listeners are going to want to be interested in learning more. So where can our listeners find you?
You can find me at Stacey Vulakh, Stacey Vulakh, Vulakh on Instagram. And then I do write on Substack, and it's my name on Substack as well. So those are the 2 best places to find me.
This was great. And I know, I appreciate it. I like to give little tidbits, so I know that we could probably talk for a lot longer. But
Yeah.
Stacey, thank you so much for being here today. I loved our conversation, and thank you all again for listening. I've said it time and again, this show, On Air with Dr. Pete, is meant for you. So head over and officialdrpete.com and submit ideas. It's meant to inspire and give you something to take away from here. So as always, thank you for tuning in today. If you love the episode, please head to our socials, like and share. Happy New Year, happy 2025. I'll see you all next week. And until then, spread a little kindness and stay well.